morning, everybody. Thank you for coming here so early. And earful. As I said to somebody else, it's people who are interested in education who always show up on time, raring to go. So we thank you all for being here. Let me begin by welcoming you to HigherEdTECH 2012. I'm Jinny Goldstein, the executive producer of HigherEdTECH. I'd like to begin by thanking McGraw-Hill Education for getting this summit off to a great start by sponsoring the breakfast and the round table. You'll be hearing from Madame McGraw-Hill's Education Senior Vice President for New Ventures and Strategic Services a little later in this session. But we really want to thank them. They've been a great supporter of ours from the very beginning. And again, I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning. Today, we're going to be exploring the reality and the promise of the convergence of higher education and technology. You will be hearing from visionary educators, journalists, publishers, researchers, and high-tech experts who are reinventing higher education for the digital age. You will see promising new technologies that may change what it will mean to go to college. And you will be hearing candid and diverse views on the challenges facing higher education and potential solutions. I'd like to share with you a few tips about, my pretty slide there. A few tips about navigating higher ed tech to make the day the most fruitful for you. In your summit bag, the bag on your seat, is a program guide with the agenda and speaker bios. We're going to keep our introductions of our speakers very short, so if you want to find out more about them, just check the bios at the back of the booklet. There are also some real goodies in that bag, thanks to our sponsors and supporters, so you might want to rummage through that a bit. Let me say that you're a very important part of the conversation today, and you'll be able to participate in two ways. The traditional way is that we have blocks of times throughout the day for you to ask your questions. But we also have, I think, a very exciting opportunity for you to respond to questions posed by our moderators using the iClickers, those little white devices, at many of your seats. Our appreciation to Macmillan New Ventures for providing all of these devices. Now, these iClickers are very easy to use, but make sure to turn the power on when you respond. Wait until the moderator says, "Start polling," to respond. Press the button that corresponds to the response you want to enter. And then, if you leave the room, please leave the devices on your chairs. So we appreciate that. I don't know if you noticed, there were plastic detectors outside the door. We try to stay on schedule, so if you'd like to talk to one of our fantastic speakers after a session, if you could meet that person outside rather than at the stage, we would appreciate it. There are no breaks, so just get up and leave when you need to. There are restrooms down the hall. At the back of the room, there are some additional materials for you to pick up, and you will not starve, I guarantee you. McGraw-Hill Education is sponsoring this breakfast. Bridgepoint Education is sponsoring the lunch, and there will be a special event that I guarantee you will not want to miss. And Book Renter is sponsoring the networking reception. And there should be invitations on your seat. I have extra, and we'll be putting some things up on the screen. There are two ancillary events that I want to tell you about. Immediately following Higher Ed Tech, there will be K-12 Tech will be taking place in this room at 6:30. So those of you who are interested in K-12 as well as higher education or the continuum that is K-20, I really recommend that you stay for what is going to be a very exciting presentation. There are also a few slots left on our educators tour of the CES show floor. Jim Boyle over there is the keeper of those slots, so if you're interested in participating tomorrow, either in the morning or the afternoon, please let Jim know of your interest. And I would just like to end by introducing a couple of my colleagues here. As I mentioned, Jim Boyle, who is Senior Advisor to HigherEdTECH. Bobby Camille, who will be manning the microphone to take your question. Griffin Boyle is here someplace, and he is our student in residence. And I would also like to express particular appreciation for some tech assistance extraordinaire that we've been getting from Brendan and Neil and Wiley, and I just have to tell you that they deserve a real round of applause, and you will understand this better as the day goes on in terms of the challenges of the technology. So what I'd like to do is just say, now on to the best show in Vegas. You didn't see those little slots in the back, did you? It is with great pleasure that I introduce Dr. James L. Applegate. James Applegate serves as Vice President for Program Development at the Lumina Foundation. He heads the Foundation's funding programs supporting the achievement of Lumina's big goal to dramatically increase educational attainment in the U.S., especially for low-income, first-generation, minority, and adult students. He is a passionate and eloquent advocate for redesigning higher education to support student success. It's my pleasure to introduce Jim Applegate.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jenny, and we'll try to keep on track here and give plenty of opportunity for your participation. First, let me say, A, I have no new technology product to introduce here this morning. B, I do not plan to disrobe during the show, so I want to make that clear. But I hope to lay out some ideas around what I think is one of the most urgent challenges facing the United States, and one that I believe, has a heavy implication for technology as a solution. And Jenny has already mentioned our big goal, or we call it Goal 2025, to move to 60% of the population with a high-quality college. By that we mean 2- and 4-year degrees by 2025. We have been stuck at around 40% for decades. 30 years ago, that was good enough to make us best in the world. No longer. We are now, among our younger adult population, 15th in the world. We were 12th for a while. We bemoaned that, and then the most recent international comparison data came out, and we slipped to 15th. That's our young workforce. That's our future. And so we have to figure out a way to turn this around. We spent millions of dollars figuring out what that number ought to be. We didn't throw a dart at a wall. 60% is actually a moderate challenge. It's an audacious goal, but it's where we need to be, we fundamentally believe, and we think if you look at our data on our website or look at Tony Cannavale's data at the Georgetown Center for Education of the Workforce, you will see that if we don't hit this number at some time pretty urgently, the United States will not only not be a leader in the global economy, we will not be a functioning player in the global economy. And also, we will be condemning large segments of our population to a very difficult life, and certainly nothing like what many of us have been privileged to enjoy in our lifetimes. The definition of success. What are we talking about when we talk about increasing education attainment? To do that, to reach that 60% goal, we're going to have to dramatically increase participation in post-secondary education, college, and we're also going to have to dramatically increase the completion rates. And technology is heavily implicated in both of those solutions, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a moment. But it is not just increasing graduation rates. Any provost or president worth their salt knows how to increase their graduation rate. You only accept those students who are going to graduate anyway unless they get hit by a truck. And in fact, I saw one university that got a lot of accolades for increasing its graduation rate. I looked at the actual number of degrees they produced, and it actually went down because they narrowed the neck, became more selective. Yes, their rates went up, but they're not producing the kind of workforce and the kind of citizenry that we need for the United States to succeed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on why this is important. I sort of assume I'm speaking to the choir here, but just a few pieces of data on this. This is a slide that I was a communication professor, if any of my public speaking students had thrown this up, I would have marked them down because it's too complicated. But if you pay attention to the blue dots on there, and you go, that's the younger workforce, and you go down to the middle of that slide, 15th, as I noted, the United States. You notice something relatively unique about the United States among all other developed countries. That is, the blue dots, the yellow dots, all the dots that represent the different ages of the workforce are kind of clustered together. We're one of the few, if you look at the countries that are at the top, their younger workforce is significantly more educated than the older workforce. They're moving in the right direction. We're not. That is ominous for our future, as I noted. Now, you know, there are those who say, well, do we need all these new college graduates? We've got a recession. Everybody's got a story about a college graduate who's a bartender. By the way, we have data to suggest that bartenders who are college graduates make significantly more money than bartenders who aren't. Just saying, okay? But regardless of that, what we're seeing here, and what we're seeing here, this is no new news for many of you. As you know, people who are more educated make more money. But you might notice something about what's happening to those lines between those different levels of education. They're getting wider. And in fact, right now, a college graduate can expect to make 87% more in their lifetime than a non-college graduate. And that number was around 40% 20 or 30, 40 years ago. So it's more than double. And if we don't do anything about it, that wage premium will be 100% by 2025. That's not good for the country. Economists tell us that's too much of a premium. It should be around 50%. And if it was around 50% and we had our 60% goal met, it would add about $500 billion to the GDP. We could buy Switzerland if we were able to achieve that. So the point is, the market is telling us we don't have an oversupply of college graduates. Any economist will tell you if you're paying that kind of a premium for a product, to use that word, you have a shortage, not an oversupply. College graduates are doing better even in the depths of this recession. More higher wages, more employment. It's always been the case in every recession. The more educated get hit the least and come back fastest. How do we achieve the big goal? That's what I want to get to here, because that's where the technology solution is implicated. I can certainly provide, if any of you have any questions about why we need to increase, I can certainly provide a lot more data on that. But I want to talk about why, because that's how we do it, because that's really where technology is implicated, as I noted. To succeed, we've got to focus on 21st century students. At Lumina, we used to say we care about low income, first generation, students of color, and adult learners. And then we thought, well, when we say that, we send the message that probably that's a special group that needs special help. Those are, in fact, the 21st century students. And in fact, that increase of 40 to 60% we're talking about will have to come almost entirely from that group of people. You know, all the wealthy white kids are pretty much going to college, right? If we're going to increase, we've got to reach those groups, the 21st century students, that we haven't reached very well in the past. And yet we find, I jumped ahead there a little bit. Let me go back just a bit. Yet we find that when we talk to policymakers at the state level, the national level, maybe even people in this room, because so many of them went to the traditional elite institutions, when they think about higher ed, they think about quads and frisbees and football games on Sunday and dormitories. That's not today's higher education, as this number would suggest. We need a higher education system that is designed to meet the needs of the people who need it, and we don't have that right now. One example of an underserved population are adults. There are adults with only high school. There are adults who don't even have a high school credential. We're working with all those. But just for the moment, I want to focus on adults with some college and no degree. There are 35.8 million adults in this workforce, 22% of the workforce, that went to college and didn't finish. They left with nothing, no degree, no credential, maybe some debt. But that's about it. And in fact, almost half of those have over 60 hours of credit. We've got to get those folks back. Why do we have to do that? It's a simple matter of demography. In the vast majority of states in this country, few exceptions, but the vast majority of states, we're just not growing fast enough to achieve what we need with our kids. We care about the kids. It is about the kids, but it's not all about the kids. It's also about the adults. In fact, in the majority of states, if you took every baby born between now and our goal date of 2025, and you put them in a college-going camp at birth, and you let their parents visit them on weekends, and you made sure that every single baby graduated from high school, went to college, and got a college degree, they would not be where they need to be in 2025 to have a functioning workforce. We've got to reach back out into the current workforce and bring them back into college, and that's another area, it's a huge area where we need technology-infused solutions, and I'll talk about that again in just a moment. We also have these huge gaps. You notice on here, I'll just focus on the Hispanic Latino population, the adult population, the lowest college attainment rate of any group. They have the lowest college going rate, the lowest college success rate, and yet the U.S. Census tells us that there will be 80 million more Latinos in this country by 2050. If we don't address that group and meet their education needs, we are lost. That is not a Latino problem. That is an American economic and social problem. It's also about social class. We don't like to talk about class in the United States. Europeans have class. We're a democracy. We don't have class. Actually, I have some more recent numbers than this on the breakout of four-year college degree attainment by income. And now, among the young people in the highest income quartile, that percent is over 80%. And for young people from lowest income quartiles, it's under 10%. So it's getting worse. So unless you believe that intellectual capacity and competence and ability to contribute to this country is divided by income, that poor people are somehow inherently dumber and rich people are smarter, something is really wrong here. And we have other data that show that low-income kids who's knocked the tops off of SATs and ACTs have no better chance of getting a college degree than rich kids who score near the bottom of the SAT, ACT score. So right now we have a system where it works out pretty much the same if you're rich and dumb or smart and poor. And any business person will tell you they cannot afford to lose all of that intellectual talent that we're throwing away simply because we cannot provide access to high-quality education for people based on income or the color of their skin. Zip code should not be the determiner of opportunity in the United States. So what do we need? What do we have to move forward here? This is a massive challenge. As I said, 23 million more degrees we need to produce between now and 2025 than we're on track to produce. We need a system that leapfrogs over incremental change, focuses on student learning and acceleration, targets those least well-served, and develops low-cost, technology-infused models developing high-quality competency and learning. I see my green light has come on here, so I can't go into depth on that. Perhaps we can talk about what that really looks like going forward. This is disruptive innovation. This is thinking about who are the players that are going to come, those of you familiar with Clay Christensen, who are going to come in here on the outer part of that circle to serve the needs of adults and Latinos and students of color and low income. Who's going to do that? I often liken traditional, I hope this is not the case, but if you look at the technology industry, we had mainframes, they were high quality, they were very good, very few people could access them. The PCs came along, initially they weren't quite the quality of mainframes, but you saw what happened to that industry. And I sometimes wonder if some of our traditional approaches are, we're not looking at the mainframes of higher education during the current era. And this has to be much more than traditional education, distance education. This is a shift in the way we deliver education to an open learning, open education resource, competency-based approach. Putting traditional classes online and professors online and throwing them up on the web is not what we're talking about here. There's some examples I want to share with you, but I think I'm running out of time. We can talk about those. The Carnegie Open Learning Initiative is one example. We can go into detail on that in a moment. I do want to note to you that yesterday we announced, it's on our website, we announced the launch of what we're calling Next Generation College Preparation Work. What does it look like in terms of use of gaming, mobile technologies, and others to reach the millions of people we need to prepare for college? We also need new delivery mechanisms within college. So I'm just going to go, since I'm running out of time here, to the end. Yeah.
Give you a couple more minutes.
Oh, okay.
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. All right. So what this really takes to get us here is, first of all, we have to identify what those effective practices are that deliver competency-based, open, accessible, low-cost, high-quality delivery of education that prepares people for the next stages of their life. Then we need to build the will, which is around among our policymakers, among our public, in this country, understand why this is so important. And then we have to get rid of bad policies and put in place good policies that allow good practices to scale and serve the millions of people that need to be served. What are some of those creating? I'll just focus for a moment on policy. We need to remove regulatory barriers to scalability, productivity, and innovation. If you want to, we have a desperate need for nurses in this country. If you want to offer a high-quality nursing program at scale across the 50 states, to have to go to 50 different states and get approval by 50 different nursing boards is bad policy. It's a bad way to try to scale effective practice in higher education. The same for teaching, the same in so many other areas. We need to hold all institutions accountable for quality and student success in college and the workplace. That is the Holy Grail. Whether you're for-profit, not-for-profit, or public, the question is there ROI for your students? Are they succeeding at the next level? And we need to focus on performance, especially for underrepresented groups. That is, let's reward those institutions who do the best job of taking those groups that we have traditionally underserved and serve them so they can have a decent quality of life. So let me wrap this up. Let me wrap this up simply by saying that it is important and urgent that all of us in the education sectors, in the technology sectors, in the policy sectors, begin to recognize that if we do not solve this problem, our economy will suffer greatly, and we are condemning millions, in fact, the fastest growing percentages of our population, to a life of working poor, which is really what a high school credential means in a 21st century economy. It means you will be working poor. I conclude with a quote. Since I'm in communication, you have to end with a quote. Adrian Rich, one of my favorite poets, wrote back in the 70s, "The rules break like a thermometer. Quicksilver spills across the charted system. Whatever we do together is pure invention. The maps they gave us were out of date by years. The maps they gave us were out of date by years. I would suggest our higher ed maps right now are out of date by decades. In the end, it's not about any sector. It's not about institutions. It's about them. And the groups that we need to reach out to that we have traditionally underserved so that they can have a decent life, and understanding that it is in our self-interest that they be educated, because otherwise all of us will suffer." Thanks very much.
If you had any doubt that it was worthwhile getting up early this morning, I think that Jim put that to rest. And the Holy Grail is what we're after at this conference, the Educational Holy Grail. It's my pleasure now to introduce the moderator of the next session. And if you follow education and technology, you undoubtedly have read articles by Josh Fischman. Josh is the senior science and technology writer for the Chronicle of Higher Education and has covered almost every major development in the field. The Chronicle is our media partner, and Josh has been an invaluable advisor to us throughout the planning of this event. Josh?
Thank you, Jinny. Hey, good morning. How you doing? Excellent. So Jim has tossed us a big issue. We have the big issue, but Jim has framed it and put it right in our face, which I think is great. And we've got some big-name panelists and big thinker types to help us deal with it here in the next half hour. Jim, you know, Vice President for Program Development at Lumina, which is important because they've got the fervor, they've got the research, and they've got some money. So we pay attention to them. He's joined today by two tech and education veterans. We have Vineet Madan, who's the Senior Vice President for New Ventures and Strategic Services at McGraw-Hill Education. He led McGraw-Hill into Inkling and Hot Shock, two very interesting tech education companies. And he's joined by Mehdi Matsudna, who's the CEO of BookRenter.com website. Go there, check it out. Mehdi was at Cafe Press before that and IntelliSync. And we also have you. And your brain power and your thoughts are very much a part of today's convocation session. And one of the ways that we want to get you involved are those little white remotes called iClickers, which you'll find on your seats. And I'm going to ask you some questions there. They're very easy to use, as Jinny said earlier, and if you pick them up now, make sure that the power is on. Just going to do a little test to show you how it works. Okay? This is the Bagels and Bandwidth breakfast. So, if you like bagels more than bandwidth, press A. Now, if you like bandwidth more than bagels, press B. Thank you. Polling is closed. And the winner in New Hampshire, the winner here. All right, we got some bandwidth fans here. Now, for those of you who like bagels, did you put onions on them? Press A. You did not put onions on them? Press B. Polling is closed, and hey, that's good. We don't have to segregate the room. I was going to ask all the onions on one side and non-onions on the other. Anyway, so that's how it works. And we have a couple of now more serious questions, more related to the content of Jim's presentation. And what I'd like to know from you all is, what do you think the primary reasons for the high dropout rate that Jim alluded to really are? Is it A, and this is where you press these buttons, so I'm throwing 3 more at you. A, the cost of attending college. B, academic failure. C, family commitments. D, the need to work and make money. Or E, the availability of classes that fit your schedule. Think about it. You got 3 seconds. Polling's closed, and the results. Hey, we have a tie between the cost of attending college and the availability of classes that fit the schedule. Did I get that right? No, I got that wrong. Sorry. It was the need to work and make money. Okay, so the economy seems to be pretty much upmost in your minds. Now, next, what will have the biggest impact on increasing college graduation rates during the next 3 years? A, colleges and universities themselves. B, the government. C, business. D, the economy. Or E, technology advances. Vote. You're done. And the answer is? Okay, D and E are the leaders. The economy, once again, and not surprisingly for a CES session, technology advances. You guys are technology optimists. So this is a very good next question. What is the biggest obstacle to integrating technology in higher education? A, cost. B, lack of bandwidth. C, the reluctance of faculty to use technology. I can't imagine that would ever happen. D, student acceptance. I can't imagine that would ever happen either. Or E, the technology hasn't been perfected yet. Please vote. Polling is now closed. And A, and mostly C, reluctance of faculty to use technology. You are not fans of tweed jackets. What will be the technology game changer in elevating higher education grad rates? Again, this is what Jim has pointed out on those graph lines is vitally important. Elevating higher education graph rates in the next 3 years. A breakthrough learning management system. B, rapid expansion of accredited fully online colleges and universities. C, an accountability system that evaluates instructor effectiveness. Or D, none of the above. Vote early, don't vote often. And polling's closed, and all right, so we've got D followed by B, an accountability system that evaluates instructor effectiveness. Accountability, I'm sorry, did I get that wrong? Right, accreditation. Could you throw that up again, Liz? I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Okay, D and B, none of the above. All right, hey, and who voted none of the above? Can I pick on you? Why? It's going to be students? Rest of you, none of the aboves hit that point? Agree with that? This is a student-driven change? Consumer market? All right. Now, I'm going to throw some of these things over to our panel, and let me kick off the discussion with the question, what do you guys think? And Jim, you've had your say a little bit, so I'm going to start with Vineet and Mehdi. What do you think are the primary reasons that so many of the colleges and universities have a high dropout rate today?
You want to show it to you? So, I don't know if this is working or not, but
yeah, we can hear you.
So first, I want to say great presentation, Jim. That was awesome. First of all, I'm not an expert in education. I want to put that on the table. I am an entrepreneur. We start companies. I've been doing it for 20 years. Joined Book Renter 2 years ago. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm an outside sort of technologist approaching the educational market. My observations and my team's observations in the past 2 years of studying this market is that higher education as a product is one of the few remaining competitive products we have in this country. So I just want to put that on the table. So we spend billions of dollars bailing out GM, Citigroup, and ask yourself what's competitive and differentiated about GM and Citigroup versus Stanford, Harvard, MIT. Everybody in the world wants to come to our higher education institutions. So my sort of non-expert observation of this market is we have a very, very effective product that the world demands, and we can't supply enough of it.
So it works, but...
So I just want to put that on the table that my observation first is we have a very competitive product on a global basis, and we don't have enough of it. And we are funding the wrong industries at a governmental level versus education. So
what are the right industries?
But let me finish. So I think it doesn't contradict what Jim says. I think there are many ways to scale the product that we have. And the analogy that he had of taking mainframes to PCs is maybe the right analogy. But that doesn't mean we walk away from our mainframe technology and think it's not working. It's actually working really well. We don't fund it effectively. We do have a problem of scale, meaning the demand, as Jim showed, for our higher education and the results of that higher education, that you double your salary, tells you that there's a long tail. There are a lot of people in the line who want to access this product and they can't afford it. Now, that raises a lot of interesting questions around how do you lower the cost of manufacturing? How do you lower the cost of offering that product to the market? And that's how we as a team approach this problem, which is we look at higher education and we don't ask the question of what's broken. We ask the question of how do you lower the cost of both offering the product and distributing the product. And about 2.5 years ago, we chose to take on the second largest cost in this market, which is cost of content, textbooks. We actually looked at the cost of tuition from an investment perspective. It's much harder to tackle that problem. Again, not because I think the educators are doing a bad job. It's just very difficult in our economy to lower the cost of what it takes to educate people, unless you give them technologies and platforms that scales the reach of an instructor. So we attacked the textbook problem. We have effectively reduced the cost of textbooks, which I think really impacts your ability to stay in school. And to just come back to your question, the number one reason that students drop out from what we have looked at in the market is cost. They cannot afford to stay in school, either because they don't have sufficient funding or they're working full-time and it's too complex to balance work and school. So I think it really comes down to how do you provide the same quality of the product that you have at a lower cost to more of your population. That's what we're trying to tackle in this economy.
You brought up the cost of course materials. I want to turn to Vineet, who knows something about them from his perspective at McGraw-Hill. How do you feel about that? Is technology going to help bring the cost down?
Well,
are they priced too high?
Well, look, I think everything's on a relative basis, right? So, so let's ground the conversation. And so over the last decade, the average rate of increase in the price of materials for courses has gone up less than the rate of increase in tuition and fees, right? So when I look at the cost of education, I'm a parent of 3, right? I take a look at what's my total cost of ownership, total cost of delivery, and what's necessary to generate an outcome. So as we look at our business and what we're delivering into the market, we're increasingly shifting away from delivering products, which are used in part of a learning experience, and increasingly getting deeper into the workflow of instructors, deeper into the workflow of students, saying, can we deliver more value and efficiency with software throughout what they're doing, whether it's doing their homework, whether it's studying for tests offline with personalized learning tools, and say, can we deliver more value to them in teaching and learning? If we can, hopefully we can drive better outcomes, and the results we've generated over the last couple of years with some of our adaptive learning products show that we can, with regular use, we can get students performing on average 1 grade level higher than they would otherwise. I mean, that's pretty powerful. And so where we're shifting ourselves more towards is less of saying, okay, here, take the book and do with it what you will, but more, hey, there's a piece of software, there's a personalized learning experience we can help provide you with, and we're not the only ones going down this path. Okay. If you do that and do it effectively, then you can do a better job and actually learn more of that material and be more successful in your college courses, and hopefully address some of the problems that Dr. Applegate raised about high participation in post-secondary education, but low completion rates and low success rates. So we're all about increasing the success rates and completion rates.
Now, Jim, could you jump in here and?
Yeah, let me a couple things. First, let me say that if you look at our overall higher ed system, it's not the best in the world. Yes, if you look at Stanford, you look at Harvard, but the percentage of students that they serve is minuscule compared to the demand that I've talked about. Most of the Latino students, half Latino students start in community colleges. Many of our community colleges have a 3-year graduation rate under 10%. So when you go there, you have a less than 1 out of 10 chance. Now, we invest heavily in the community college sector. We think they are part of the solution. And the cost factor, there are a number of things. Certainly, we're interested in open education resources. Invite you to go to the OLI, which is different than that site. But beyond that, I mean, we think there's a whole productivity issue that needs to be addressed in higher education. Higher ed needs to address its cost drivers, drive them down, contain costs, and redivert that money towards students. We have a site called collegeproductivity.org if you're interested, and we call it the 4 steps to productivity. And there's really 4 big areas. I won't go into them here, but there's 4 big areas in which higher ed needs to address to really drive costs down. I'll give you one example, Western Governors University. Western Governors University is a not-for-profit institution. It's growing rapidly. It's a national institution. It also has state like WGU Indiana, WGU Washington, WGU Texas. Their tuition over a year is around $8,000. It has not changed in 5 years. They're totally online. They target adults. It's competency-based. One quick example of how that works. I knew a woman. She had been an accountant. She was in her early 40s. She wanted to come back and be a high school teacher. She went to traditional institutions, and how many years do you think they told her it was going to take for her to become a math high school teacher? 3 to 4, right? She went to WGU. They have a competency-based program. They know what you're supposed to know. You can challenge courses, take assessments. If you know it, you get the credit. She got 26 credits her first semester because she knew math better than most high school math teachers in this country do. Then she was able to zero in on what she didn't know, which is how to teach math to a group of hormone-driven adolescents in a classroom, right? She got out in a year and a summer, and they have student teaching, and was in the classroom teaching in a year and a summer. That, you want to talk about driving down costs. I agree, textbooks, tuition. You move to an accelerated competency-based model where people get credit for what they already know and move forward. You know, right now, in several studies we've done, the average number of hours, that students accumulate toward the baccalaureate degree is 145 for a 120-hour baccalaureate degree. It's in the 80s for a 60-hour associate degree. What if you could not only cut that back to what it's supposed to be, but drive it where a lot of that was accelerated? Man, you are really talking about containing costs for students. And again, back to the system piece, most of the students I talked about, adults, Latinos, students of color, low-income students, are not going to go to Harvard, to those elite universities. They have a role to play. I'm not arguing against that. But our system as a whole is not serving them very well. And as a matter of fact, even those wealthy institutions, there was a recent study done, the institutions with the greatest endowments, even after the recession, the number of Pell eligible, meaning low-income students going to those institutions, has declined over the last several years. So they're not the answer to our problem.
Right. And you bring up some really good points about the role of technology in accelerating and driving down costs, and I want to get back to that because I think that you mentioned Carnegie Mellon's OLI initiative, and they've got data, I believe, showing that they've accelerated one course in particular, 7 weeks instead of 15 weeks, and the student's performance was identical, and their outcomes were identical, and in some cases better. And the way that they did this was using cognitive tutors and various kinds of software to analyze students' performance and use the analytics to adjust the pace of the course.
Right.
And so, Vineet, Mehdi, are there other ways that technology can have an impact in this access and completion issue?
Yeah, I would mention, well, I don't want to leave the access piece out, because while you're right, we made more improvement in participation than we have in completion, we still are not getting anywhere near the number of students to some form of post-secondary education that we need to. And I mentioned Latinos, for example, fastest growing population, have the lowest going rate. That's why we launched yesterday on our website. You can go there and see the video webinar launch. Full disclosure, I'm on it. I have a speaking part. But anyway, where we're looking at, we had a program that had been funded for 20 years to help students fill out the FAFSA and get financial aid that they deserved. After 20 years, we were serving 50,000 students in 36 states. We need to serve 5 million students, right? So that, on the participation, so these things, these planning grants we gave yesterday are people who've come to us with what they think is innovative, what they think can be done with things like gaming, third-generation mentoring platforms. We know mentoring works, but one arm around one child is not a scalable model. We don't have enough arms, and we certainly don't have enough money to pay all those arms. So we have to find ways that mentoring can be scaled. So gaming technologies, third-generation mentoring, mobile apps. There's a digital divide, yes, but if you can get to the mobile side of the house, there's less of a digital divide. Why can't students find what they need to know about how to go to college in accessible ways and have a kind of a GPS system for learning how to go to college on their phones? We've got things that are that are equally complicated on the phone already. Why shouldn't there be an app for that?
Mehdi, should there be an app for that?
No, I actually want to step back, and I want to, just to make it more fun, I want to be controversial. I love what Jim says, but you have to sort of step back and ask the question, is that the right goal? So I want to first sort of step back. We're a $14 trillion economy. To grow at 3%, we need to generate $420 billion of growth a year. Okay, $420 billion of growth a year. So if you approach the U.S. problem saying that we have an educational problem where we don't teach people how to qualify for a job, we don't have a manufacturing economy anymore. You have to be realistic. We can only grow at about 3% or 400 billion if we innovate. We need significant innovation in our economy. We need to invent the next internet. We need to invent the next industrial revolution of some sort. And you're not going to do that by pushing people through an educational system where I focus on what you don't know about how to do, your job as an accountant. We need to think about education, and I know it sounds sort of, to some people it might sound sort of fantasy, but again, I go back. We are very good at educating people not for their job today, but we've been very good at educating people for the future of this economy. And that requires investment. It's not going to come by me shrinking humanities out of your education, trying to graduate in about 12 months so that you qualify for a job that's disappearing in about 4 years. I question that goal as an objective for our economy. Now, if I was in China and I had 1 billion people that needed to be educated for a manufacturing economy, yeah, I would be asking one question. How do you shrink 4 years into one so that I can get you to go to work? We do not have that economy in the U.S. And I think if we set that up as our goal, I don't see how we continue to grow at 3% a year in a $14 trillion economy.
Yeah, I think Mehdi's got a good point in that, the average tenure of a career nowadays is somewhere close to 7 years, according to the Department of Labor. If it takes you, let's say another 5 to 7 years to get that 4-year degree, if you're lucky, well, you've just missed one whole career stop that you could have had. So that model doesn't work. But given the educational system that we had, because I want to come back to some of the things Dr. Applegate was talking about, one of the big issues that we have behind the dropout or retention side of it, depending on how you want to look at it, is just preparedness for doing that work. So, I mean, one of the things that we've been looking at and saying, where can we apply technology differently, is this whole space of developmental education. So for those who don't know, it's the basic non-credit bearing, but you have to pay for reading, writing, and math courses you would need to take before you can qualify to do college level work. And we're saying, can we do things with adaptive assessment and adaptive learning and really build accelerated courses so that you're not locked into a 14-week semester. So if I know half the math I need to get ready for college, but I don't know the other half, why should I sit there for 14 weeks with folks who don't know any of it, and it'll probably take them 30 weeks to figure it out? I should be able to go through it in my own timeline in an accelerated fashion. So where we've been making investments is in building adaptive learning in these accelerated courses in the developmental education space to get folks more ready for college level work. We believe that if we can get folks more prepared for college level work, then when they enter into college level work, they're more likely to be successful.
If I could just jump in.
Okay.
You mentioned adaptive learning, and that's an area that your rather influential company is making a bet. Could you talk to us a little bit about that bet?
Sure. So I'll give you a practical example of something that we've been doing here. So we've had a partnership with Alex in the higher ed side in math for probably close to 10 years now. In the Alex system is based on this thing called knowledge space theory. Rather than belaboring you with the details, it's basically an ongoing assessment of what folks know and don't know, and then selectively providing them with the content they need to take the next step, and then testing back against things they've supposed to have learned in the past to make sure that they retain that knowledge as they progress through, right? And so it's kind of an ever-expanding pie, if you want to think about it that way, and that's how they graphically show it. So we've looked at those types of models on the math side, and those have been scaling very, very nicely, and we see great demand and great success rates with those. We've taken that learning and that intelligence and started applying it to all sorts of other disciplines. Mm-hmm. Everything from management to medical terminology to, actually we've got 36 different course areas covered now with this adaptive learning technology that we call LearnSmart. We're building it with a partner. And that's available for over 60 plus titles. We've had students who have now taken over 300 million questions through these pieces of software. Mm-hmm. So that is an extraordinarily rich data set about what students are learning, how they're learning it, how quickly they're learning it, and how they're progressing through content that we can use to then change the way that we develop our content and our products and services to get to this next set of courses. Okay. But it's one of these things where you need to generate the data in the right way and align it to the learning objectives in order to figure out how to reconvey a learning experience. And so those are the investments that we've been making over the last few years.
Jim, you're chomping at the bit here.
Yeah, I want to go back to the question about quality, which is what that question was about. I want to be clear. If you looked at our big goal, it's 60% of the population it was in red, I think, on my slide, high-quality post-secondary credential. What does that mean? Well, if you go to our website, you will see we have a whole body of work around what does quality mean. We have put out there what we believe. We've worked with many organizations. We're now funding work with private colleges, accreditors, public institutions around that issue. We have tried to define, with the help of a lot of experts, what should an associate degree mean? What should a baccalaureate degree mean? What should a master's degree mean? And underneath those competencies that I talked about are things like critical thinking, problem solving, being able to communicate with diverse audiences. So we're not talking here about Joe Lockery, who used to head Cummins, which is a manufacturing company who drove through this recession without missing a beat. He will tell you advanced manufacturing is about entrepreneurship. It's about problem solving. It's about change. So we're really talking about what we believe quality is a transparent set of learning outcomes that are assessed to make sure students. I think a person who gets an associate degree in applied technologies or auto technology should have the opportunity to come out of there with those kinds of skills, as well as knowing something about how to fix my car. I'd like for them to know that. And the same for a baccalaureate degree. And another measure of quality, frankly, and I'll be upfront about this, is what happens to the students after they complete the degree. In our data systems in this country, even when we have the data available, we do not use the data to track college graduates and find out what happens to them when they leave. And we are funding some work where we will be able to, I think, very shortly, in many states, produce annual reports that will tell every university what happened to their college graduate within a year, whether they were employed, what their wages were, and whether that employment was anything like the degree in the area that they studied. Because part of quality is improving the lives of the people that move to the next level. And if you're not doing that, that's also, I mean, hopefully the learning contributes to that. But ultimately, if we're not producing degrees that are aligned with the demands of a growing economy that needs innovation, that needs these kinds of skills, then we've got to realign and do a better job with the learning we're providing. And I agree 100%, it is not about filling up kids' heads. It's not about seat time. If you're focused on seat time for students, you're focused on the wrong end of the student. And what you really want to focus on is what they're learning and what will prepare them for the next level. That's the key, and we just have to hold ourselves accountable for that. And I do think that technology, the kinds like the Open Learning Initiative, the adaptive pieces, can really help us be more efficient and effective in delivering that high-quality learning at a lower cost. I think that's what we have to do, because we have to develop the capacity. It's not only about cost, it's about capacity. If we're going to say that the measure of quality is teacher-student ratio, and I went to 15 colleges last year because my son was going to college and I did all these campus tours. Oh, we've got a 12-to-1 student-faculty ratio. Oh, we've got an 8-to-1. We've got a 15-to-1. I don't care. Show me what your students are learning. And I think we've got evidence that there's different ways to deliver the same kind of high-quality learning. I tell you what, if we've got to have one faculty member for every 25 students, and we need 23 million more degrees than we're on track to produce, and we think that's the way to go, we're not going to get there. We're just not going to get there. We don't have enough teachers, and we don't have enough bricks and mortar to build enough buildings and dorms and other things to do that. It's got to be a technology-infused solution. I'm not a technophile nor a technophobe, and I don't think technology is the only answer. But it's got to be a significant part of the answer. And I think the people in this room are ones that can help us think about what does that look like. And as I said before, it is not taking your courses as you currently teach them and your faculty as they currently teach and throwing them up online. That is not the answer. Okay? In fact, we know there's high dropout rates in that kind of approach. And it's really, higher ed is the only industry, and I was a professor for 20 years, so I love my colleagues. I'm not as hard on faculty as you guys are. But higher ed is the only industry I know that claims that technology adds costs. Every other industry in the United States uses technology to drive down cost and improve quality. And the reason we think it adds cost is because we keep doing everything we already do, and we bolt on the technology. And yeah, in that model, it adds cost because you're doing everything else the same way and you're adding something new. You've got to figure out, hence my talk, the redesign. What does the redesign look like? With technology that produces, again, I'm totally in agreement with the point we've got to have high-quality degrees that prepare students for the kind of economy that's coming forward. And this economy will, the rote jobs are going away. You know, those GM jobs, there will be jobs at GM, but those GM jobs that you could do with a high school degree and support a middle-class family are gone, and they are not coming back. This recession saw more jobs disappear permanently than any recession of the last 7 that we've had. So when you've got higher ed has a huge responsibility to not only better educate those coming up through the traditional pipeline, but to re-educate the folks that are out there. Their lives depend on it. I mean, we fund programs, Auto Communities Network, all the communities that were hit hard by the decline in the auto industry. It's community colleges and universities coming together to provide accessible to people who have families and complicated lives and jobs, or maybe not jobs, they're unemployed, they have no money, accessible education so that auto worker can become a nurse, which is needed, or that auto worker can become something that's needed. And that's the responsibility of higher education, and we need to have strong partnerships with the tech sector to do that.
Okay, I think that's a rousing point to end on. I'd like to thank the panel in particular, Vineet, Mehdi, and Jim, for focusing us on the role that technology can play in increasing the quality of higher education, and not just putting butts in seats, not just putting
facts in the heads, but teaching critical thinking, and for pointing out that there is an ecosystem in higher education, and you guys have also pointed this out, that presents some obstacles to doing that. And the rest of the day is going to be devoted to exploring all of those. So I'd like you to join me in giving a hand to this panel.